Bitcoin has started the first quarter of 2023 as the world's top performing asset. Everyone's now wondering, is the next cycle starting for all of cryptocurrency? Here with me today is Nick, Senior Research Analyst at Collective Shift, and he just recently wrote a post for members, bringing them up to speed with his thoughts on whether this sort of crypto itself, the asset, is about to go on a big rally, or whether this is more of a Bitcoin specific thing. So I'm looking forward to chatting with Nick and getting him to share his thoughts with us today. So Nick, welcome. And maybe just talk through a bit of the impetus for your post.
Yeah, awesome. Cheers, Matt. That was a good intro. I think the topic on everyone's lips at the moment is the Bitcoin rally. So this post really was diving into Bitcoin's place in the ecosystem, because as we know, not all cryptocurrencies are created equal. So looking into this post, I highlight a few core themes, such as its perhaps greater certainty than some other crypto assets, and really diving into some of past content that we delivered to members, rehashing that because it had similar themes and kind of brought me to the conclusion that I wasn't too surprised rereading some of this old content and kind of the mental model I had, because as we've seen, it sort of played out, especially with increased regulation. Bitcoin has held up extremely well, rallied through that, and is now rallying through a lot of the new issues that have surfaced in the traditional banking sector.
Yeah, no, it's quite interesting to see all the way back then. This sort of storyline and your arguments back then still be holding up really well today. I suppose when you talk about Bitcoin as being more like certain around regulations versus the rest of cryptocurrencies, can you just explain what do you sort of mean by that? Because people sort of think of crypto as one big thing.
So at the moment, a lot of the issue is a lack of clarity in terms of what these cryptocurrencies actually are. Bitcoin has perhaps the highest level of regulatory certainty at the moment. It's one of the only assets that Gary Gensler actually calls a commodity. And I think a lot of people in the space have all agreed is a commodity. Whereas things like ETH, even though it's the second largest crypto asset and one of the biggest ones in the space, that still does not have regulatory clarity. And notably, a lot of high-profile regulators are shying away from labeling ETH, commodity. Is it a security? And a lot of other proof-of-stake cryptocurrencies are really in the firing line. So Bitcoin, as it stands, has that clarity, that it is a commodity, whereas a lot of these other cryptocurrencies are potentially coming under fire, with their foundations facing heavy fines and potential legal action because of the way that they're, conducting these coins.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that. So with, Bitcoin, being, in the US and many other places around the world, a commodity, why is it that certainty that you're arguing is its strength there? Or are you sort of implying that maybe for Ethereum and the others, if they are, is it better for them to be like a security or commodity, or are you more just saying that uncertainty itself is the problem?
Yeah, I just think as a whole, that uncertainty is the problem. Ultimately, I think you may agree with me that that's where I see for Ethereum as a bull case, once that has more regulatory clarity and once there's overall clarity in the market, that these smaller cryptocurrencies that perhaps do, are securities or whatever they are, they're known. And then they can start to comply in the best way possible. And then I think people can get into the industry if they do want to launch cryptocurrency projects, because at the moment, no one's launching a lot of things because there's just no clarity in the market. So in my mind, that's still a way off for Ethereum. And while we deal with a lot of the massive onslaught of regulation that's going to be coming for the space, I think Bitcoin has its assurances there. And it just doesn't have to deal with any of those questions overhanging it, which I think will allow it to, see more inflows. A lot of people will feel more comfortable seeing or putting money into Bitcoin, considering we could see a real ramp up in regulation in the coming months, targeting perhaps Ethereum, perhaps targeting any of these other proof-of-stake cryptocurrencies or DAOs that are in the market at the moment.
Yeah, understood. So then I suppose in relation to, big sort of news point, like at the end of March, even moving into April, every global headlines all seem to be about, the banks, sort of stability of the banks, like around the world, particularly in the US. Can you maybe explain, what why is that? Like, people in crypto say that's more promising, like, for Bitcoin, but like, why isn't that the case for something like ETH or Solana? Could maybe just walk through some of the reasons, like, why?
Yeah, I think it's mainly to do against, I guess, Bitcoin's foundation and what it was created for and the context that it was created out of. So we all know, I guess, the 21 supply meme, the Bitcoin carries is this assurance of its supply, and also its assurance of core changes to the platform and, to the protocol itself. Whereas if we contrast it to, I guess, the regulatory, like the current financial system we have at the moment, is, supply can be extended, at the whim of regulators, or, certain liquidity can come into the market. Banks can be bailed out. There could be any other different banking programs that, the regulators can act upon, or, the Federal Reserve can buy back government assets and things like that. Whereas Bitcoin, if you want to create a change, it is very difficult. And that's why you obviously see Bitcoin moving at such a slow pace, because it's just very difficult to change Bitcoin. And I guess that's the main benefit compared to other cryptocurrencies that perhaps change more regularly. And so it comes back to this idea of just clarity. It comes back to assurance. It moves slow. And this is sort of where Bitcoin could potentially see its inherent use case be brought out when we're looking at, why it was created and in the context of why it was, made.
No, that was a great sort of distinction. I think, as crypto continues to exist, I think the public, even parents or my mates, they're even starting to like understand, like the difference, or how Bitcoin is different from all the other cryptocurrencies. I think you did a great job then, sort of just like distinguishing that. And I think even like with previous bank collapses, the .com bubble, all those different bubbles throughout the 20th, 21st century, we didn't have like something as a sort of a bearer asset to go into. Like, yes, there was gold, but the accessibility of something like Bitcoin during uncertain times like this, I think is a big reason. And I know you agree as for why it's year to date the best performing asset in the world. So, Nick, like, I suppose in your posts, how did you sort of leave it in terms of, outlooks are, basically impossible really, but like to give some sort of, I think it's good to share some of your sentiment in terms of where you're expecting, the next sort of, 9 months as we sort of get to the end of 2023. So are you arguing that this is not really a crypto bull run per se, but it's more just Bitcoin in the spotlight and it's probably going to stay that way?
Yeah. At the same time, I probably will. It's tough to really put your neck out and say when things are, whether the bull market is back or not. You could probably argue that looking at the 4-year cycle and the way that the market is went last year, that we could be, entering the very beginning of a new cycle, which I know there's many big names that are championing that same idea. My main contention is we are probably going to see more troubles in the banking system, and sort of the cracks could continue to show themselves. And my conclusion was just that if the worst happens, there's a high chance the US will likely be forced to drop rates. They may be forced to guarantee deposits, increase liquidity in the system, provide more of these bailouts, and ultimately, I guess, turn that quote unquote money printer back on, which I think is where Bitcoin ultimately comes in. And in that sort of environment where, we're potentially having issues with the government not being able to insure, I guess, all their bank deposits, or they create an environment where all of a sudden it becomes that the banks are too big to fail in certain regards and they're all insured, then, this is where sort of Bitcoin comes in, I think. So I think we all know anything can happen in crypto. So I'm sort of cautious as well, but ultimately over that, I guess, 1+ year time frame, I'm still pretty positive that we're going to see Bitcoin continue to perform really well if this environment, does indeed play out.
Yeah, well said. And I did like how you did wrap it up in your posts, and even saw some members really finding some of even the tweets you referenced to like some industry leaders really helpful. Maybe we can put
that one up. That was a really good one. With their
I think that's the thing in the age of social media, sharing information. More people I think are cluing up I'm not cluing up, just getting more informed, I suppose, about how banks work. And, you know, Caitlin Long is, you know, I know, well, one of both of our, you know, favorites to see and like to hear her thoughts in the industry. And again, yeah, just the world waking up. For people listening on the podcast, you know, Caitlin's tweeting here, just the world is waking up to the fact that a bank deposit is an unsecured loan to a leveraged counterparty, and that, you know, the bank's sort of joined insurance fund is a small fraction, a tiny fraction of like the total deposits in the entire, well, the US commercial banks in this case. And, you know, her big conclusion is like, hey, you know, money itself, people might start to be sort of realizing that money, or at least currency, is sort of this confidence game, and it's all built on trust. So again, Nick, to your point, if this sort of trend continues, I do agree with you that, you know, something like Bitcoin would get more of an understanding from the public and just the value proposition of it, and therefore it would probably distinguish from other cryptocurrencies. And then it still remains to be seen. Ultimately, I do agree with you there as well in terms of then what that means for the rest of the market.
And just to bring it all together as well, you know, we talked about Bitcoin being more of a certainty, and then we're talking about Bitcoin providing even more certainty via the background that we may have with the banking crisis that could be unfolding even more. And then to bring it all together, we've got Bitcoin that doesn't have to contend with exploits that we see on Ethereum, for example. You know, we saw another $200 million hack a couple of days ago. So Bitcoin just doesn't have to deal with any of these existential risks that other cryptocurrencies do have. So this is why I've sort of come to the conclusion that, you know, I'm not really too surprised, and I think it should still continue thriving amid this sort of area of uncertainty.
Yeah, well said. So yeah, we will wrap it up there. I think members, this was a really popular post with members, and a great time to sort of just remind them of, you know, how the market is yes, been going, but why that's been the case and what may be coming up in the future, which is, you know, why we get out of bed in the morning, Nick, you know, to deliver that value to members and help them make sense of this crazy world. So yeah, thanks for that explanation. And for those of you who want to learn more about, you know, what we do here at Collective Shift, you can head to our website at collectiveshift.io. We are running currently a free strategy calls for 15 minutes to just walk through all the, you know, how crypto is structured, you know, different options that, you know, market participants have in getting started with the asset class. So again, you can access that at collectiveshift.io/strategy.